I have hovered here longer than any voice remembers. Above the ridge where sacred steps fade into shadow, I have cast my quiet glow night after night, a silver breath brushing the stones and bones of this mountain. Time does not ask my name, but I have watched it pass like a procession of veiled pilgrims, seasons slipping in and out of each other, kings rising and falling like candle flames in a draught. And still I shine, though no one looks for me. They come with oil lamps cradled in cautious hands, each one shielding the little flame as though it were a soul about to be extinguished. I've seen them for generations, men wrapped in white, women in silence, children clinging to their father's robes, their faces drawn with longing they don't yet understand. They walk in clusters, pausing where the earth feels thin, where prayers rise more easily, where even rocks seem to lean in to listen. They speak the old words, or fragments of them, whispered like threads trying to find their place again in a torn garment. I don't remember the first time I saw them, but I remember the first night I understood. It was after a storm, the kind that sweeps the dust from the sky and leaves everything raw and trembling. The night was heavy with water, and yet they came. One by one, silent shapes moving uphill, not toward shelter, but toward mystery. That night, their prayers didn't ask. They waited, as if they knew something more than words was passing through the world. I could see it in the way their shadows lingered on the stone, in the way no one looked down. There is a hush that clings to these gatherings, something deeper than reverence. It is not fear, it is not duty. It is a yearning so old it has forgotten its own name. I have heard it in every language, felt it stretch across centuries, through droughts and wars and the crumbling of temples. Even when the songs stopped, the hush remained. Even when prophets fell silent, the yearning did not. Sometimes I think I am the only one who has not turned away, not out of holiness, not even out of hope, but because this is where I was placed, and so I remain, watching. It is not so different, I think, from those who come here. They, too, are placed in their longing. They, too, remain. I do not know if I have seen him. I have seen many men who called themselves messengers. I have seen robes stained with blood and sandals worn through. I have seen eyes ablaze with vision and eyes dulled by despair. But none of them have changed the hush. None have quieted the question in the air. When, O Lord? Tonight the lamps return. I see them winding up from the valley, small lights swaying with breath and hope. The priests are among them, older now, or perhaps just more tired. Their chants rise, low and steady, like water moving through reeds. The words are ancient, but their meanings are new each time. That is the way with yearning. It makes everything holy again. A boy slips, his lamp nearly falling, but a hand steadies him. No one scolds. They know how fragile the flame is. I watch as they gather beneath me, lighting the stones with their flickering faith. And though I am above them, I do not shine more. I only reflect. That has always been my place, to receive light and give it back. I wonder, sometimes, if they understand that their own waiting is a kind of reflection, that their prayers, unanswered, still glow, that in the silence between psalms, something sacred breathes. If I could speak, I would tell them this. I see you. I see your longings draped across your shoulders like cloaks too heavy for such thin bodies. I see the way you look eastward even when the sky shows nothing. I see the way you keep singing songs that no one else remembers. And I am still here. I am still bearing witness. I have hovered here longer than any voice remembers. Above the ridge where sacred steps fade into shadow, I have cast my quiet glow night after night, a silver breath brushing the stones and bones of this mountain. Time does not ask my name, but I have watched it pass like a procession of veiled pilgrims, seasons slipping in and out of each other, kings rising and falling like candle flames in a draught. And still I shine, though no one looks for me. They come with oil lamps cradled in cautious hands, each one shielding the little flame as though it were a soul about to be extinguished. I've seen them for generations, men wrapped in white, women in silence, children clinging to their father's robes, their faces drawn with longing they don't yet understand. They walk in clusters, pausing where the earth feels thin, where prayers rise more easily, where even rocks seem to lean in to listen. They speak the old words, or fragments of them, whispered like threads trying to find their place again in a torn garment. I don't remember the first time I saw them, but I remember the first night I understood. It was after a storm, the kind that sweeps the dust from the sky and leaves everything raw and trembling. The night was heavy with water, and yet they came. One by one, silent shapes moving uphill, not toward shelter, but toward mystery. That night, their prayers didn't ask. They waited, as if they knew something more than words was passing through the world. I could see it in the way their shadows lingered on the stone, in the way no one looked down. There is a hush that clings to these gatherings, something deeper than reverence. It is not fear, it is not duty, it is a yearning so old it has forgotten its own name. I have heard it in every language, felt it stretch across centuries, through droughts and wars and the crumbling of temples. Even when the songs stopped, the hush remained. Even when prophets fell silent, the yearning did not. Sometimes I think I am the only one who has not turned away, not out of holiness, not even out of hope, but because this is where I was placed, and so I remain, watching. It is not so different, I think, from those who come here. They, too, are placed in their longing. They, too, remain. I do not know if I have seen him. I have seen many men who called themselves messengers. I have seen robes stained with blood and sandals worn through. I have seen eyes ablaze with vision and eyes dulled by despair. But none of them have changed the hush. None have quieted the question in the air. When, O Lord? Tonight the lamps return. I see them winding up from the valley, small lights swaying with breath and hope. The priests are among them, older now, or perhaps just more tired. Their chants rise, low and steady, like water moving through reeds. The words are ancient, but their meanings are new each time. That is the way with yearning. It makes everything holy again. A boy slips, his lamp nearly falling, but a hand steadies him. No one scolds. They know how fragile the flame is. I watch as they gather beneath me, lighting the stones with their flickering faith. And though I am above them, I do not shine more. I only reflect. That has always been my place. To receive light and give it back. I wonder, sometimes, if they understand that their own waiting is a kind of reflection, that their prayers, unanswered, still glow, that in the silence between psalms, something sacred breathes. If I could speak, I would tell them this: I see you. I see your longings draped across your shoulders like cloaks too heavy for such thin bodies. I see the way you look eastward even when the sky shows nothing. I see the way you keep singing songs that no one else remembers. And I am still here. I am still bearing witness. They carry the candles high now, as if afraid the night will swallow their intentions if the flame sinks too low. Each step is measured, not out of fear, but out of reverence, and I follow them with my light, tracing their path across the stone. I see how their faces tilt toward the glow, as though seeking answers in the shadows cast by their own hands. Some walk in silence, others whisper fragments of psalms, broken phrases that have survived exile and fire, and in those fractured lines, I hear something whole. The priests speak softly among themselves. They speak not of doctrine, but of waiting. They wonder if the old words still hold power, if the God who parted seas still listens when no sea moves. One asks, "Is this what hope looks like, year after year?" And another answers, "Number. This is what faith looks like when it forgets how to ask for more." They light the incense, and it coils into the night like memory. Sweet, bitter, burning with the ache of prayers that have outlived the voices that first spoke them. I drift lower, not in distance, but in spirit, drawn to their perseverance. There is something about their persistence that feels sacred, even more than the rituals they perform. It is not the candle or the chant that moves heaven. It is the choice to return, again and again, even when no answer comes. A woman kneels by a stone, her hands trembling around the wick. Her child leans against her shoulder, eyes wide and solemn. They don't speak, but their silence says everything. I remember this posture from decades past, from centuries gone. Nothing has changed, and yet everything has. The lamp she holds is new, but the longing behind it is older than me. One man stands apart, a simple figure robed in linen, eyes closed. He does not pray aloud. He listens. I watch the curve of his mouth shift, not in speech, but in surrender. He holds the candle not as a symbol, but as a burden, one that he carries without knowing why. And still, he holds it. I think of the first flame, the one they say came from heaven, the fire that did not consume but called forth. This is not that fire, but perhaps it is a spark from it, passed down through ash and exile, through disillusionment and dream. If that fire was God's voice, these candles are the people's echo, and I, the moon, carry both. I carry the firelight of heaven and the reflections of human frailty. I carry their ache and their endurance, their songs and their silences. I do not burn, I do not consume, but I remain, bearing witness. They lift their faces to me not because I am the answer, but because I am the only light left in a world that has grown used to shadows. I do not warm them, nor do I speak. Yet every night, without needing instruction, they look up, as if searching for a promise once whispered into the bones of their ancestors. I have seen this posture repeated across centuries, the old man with his spine bowed by grief, the young woman pressing trembling hands to her chest, the child who doesn't yet understand what he's gazing at, only that his father does. They all look upward, and in that gesture, they remember something ancient, that above them is more than sky. I have never stopped observing them, and I have come to recognize the difference between a glance and a search. Their eyes don't merely glance, they search, they wait, they ache. Some nights, their longing rises so heavily it feels like it could draw me closer, as if their hope might pull the heavens down. It never does, of course. I remain where I have always been, hovering just beyond reach, close enough to be seen, too far to be held. I see their tears, even when they think no one notices. Not all weeping is loud. Some is quiet, sliding along the cheek and disappearing into garments before it can glisten. I see how they tilt their heads as the prayers begin, not to hear better, but to steady themselves, to remember who they are in the face of silence. For silence is what they have grown used to, not a cruel, hollow silence, but the thick, waiting kind that wraps around every question. How long, O Lord? When will you come? There was a time, perhaps, when they expected answers, when prophets walked among them and voices boomed from mountaintops. But those days, too, have faded into story, and stories, like stones, weather with time. Now, they do not ask for fire or thunder. They only ask to be remembered. That's what I see in their faces, not a demand for miracles, but a plea not to be forgotten. Some come with songs, soft and hesitant, melodies shaped by centuries of waiting. They don't sing to be heard. They sing because the silence would be unbearable otherwise. And I, a silent witness, absorb their songs like breath, holding them in my cratered memory, letting their longing echo inside me. I have become a chamber of waiting, not sacred, perhaps, but consecrated by constancy. There was a girl tonight, no older than 12, who looked at me with such intensity that for a moment I believed she could see past me. Her hands were clasped, not in prayer, but in some wordless hope she couldn't name. She didn't blink. Her gaze steadied on my light, and something in her posture reminded me of those who came before her, those whose names have long been forgotten, but whose questions still linger in the air. I watched her lips move, shaping nothing and everything. And when she finally turned away, the silence deepened, as if something had passed between us. There are others, two skeptics in white robes, scholars whose eyes flicker with doubt. Even they look upward, though they may claim it's only out of habit. But habit can be holy, too. Even the act of repeating a motion long emptied of meaning can become sacred if done with enough persistence. I see the cracks in their voices, the pauses that linger too long. They are not immune to hope. They are only afraid of what hope demands. Each face is a canvas of questions. The priest with sunken eyes, the widow holding a candle that drips onto her wrist, the man who stands at the edge of the gathering as if he's unsure he belongs. They all turn to me, and in their turning, they teach me something I did not expect to learn, that the act of looking up is itself an act of faith. They have no proof, no new signs. The skies have been quiet for what feels like forever, and yet they return, night after night, season after season, generation after generation. They return to this mountain, to these stones, to their rituals and their songs and their silences. They return to me, and I, too, remain unchanged, unmoved, but not indifferent. What moves me, if a moon can be moved, is not their prayers, but their posture, the upward tilt of weary faces, the eyes that refuse to give up searching, the mouths that keep whispering even when there's no reply. It is not the miracle that defines them, it is the waiting. And in their waiting, they shine not with their own light, perhaps, but with the reflection of something promised, something yet to be revealed. And so, I hover above them, night after night, not because I hold the answer, but because I cannot look away. If I have any purpose at all, it is this: to remind them that someone, something, still sees, that even when the heavens are silent, the silence is not empty. It is full of watching, it is full of memory, it is full of faces turned upward. I do not shine with my own fire. That is the first truth I must confess. Whatever light spills from me onto this mountain, onto their shoulders bowed in prayer, onto the tips of trembling flames in their lamps, all of it is borrowed. I am, by nature, a reflection, a mirror hung in the sky, faithful but silent. And yet, in their darkness, they mistake me for the source. They gaze at me as if I hold answers. They lift their voices beneath my glow as though it might amplify their longing. I do not correct them. Perhaps there is no need to. For even a reflection, if steady enough, can guide the way. I have lit their waiting for generations. I've watched how their eyes adjust, how their hearts rise with the moon's slow climb. The world may forget, but they do not. When the sun slips beyond the hills and the wind begins its low hum, they gather. And in the hollows of the hills, in the dips between stones, their presence creates a stillness more profound than solitude. They are not alone, though no voice answers. They are together in yearning, and that is no small thing. Sometimes I catch glimpses of what they carry, not in their hands, but in their posture, the way they hold still, the way they brace themselves against disappointment. Hope, I've learned, does not always look like joy. Often, it looks like endurance. A clenching of the jaw, a deep breath before speaking what may never be heard. A mother clutching her child's shoulder while staring into the night. An old man closing his eyes tighter, as if trying to see from within. These are not the grand gestures of faith. These are the quiet ones, the ones that last. Their waiting is not passive. It is an active offering. Each chant, each bow, each time they set foot on this mountain again, it is a sacrifice of belief. They do not demand. They do not bargain. They simply keep coming, keep lighting their lamps, keep whispering the names of prophets and promises. And I, above them, become a canvas for their devotion. I receive their glow and return it, not to answer, but to accompany. I become their witness and their companion, and perhaps that is enough. There was a night not long ago when clouds veiled me. Thick, unmoving, like wool pulled over the eyes of the world. Still they came. Still they lit their lamps. One by one, their flames rose against the dark, refusing to be hidden. I could not see them, but I knew they were there. I could feel the pull of their presence, the collective yearning pressing into the sky. And then, as if drawn by their persistence, the clouds began to part. Slowly, deliberately, like hands opening. And I was revealed again, not as savior, but as signal. You are seen. That moment did not change history. No wars ended, no prophecies fulfilled. But something in their breath shifted, something in the tilt of their heads lightened. They took one more step, one more song, one more silence held between hands. And I, unseen and silent, felt honored to be part of it. I think often about the fire they await, the light that does not borrow from another, the radiance that will not wax and wane. They speak of it in phrases like dawn, kingdom, fulfillment. They imagine it as something that will break through suddenly, without warning, changing everything in an instant. But I wonder if it will come more quietly, if it will arrive like a seed cracking open underground, or like a word whispered just once, yet shaking the foundation of everything known. I wonder if it will look more like them than they expect, weary, persistent, luminous with borrowed hope. Until then, they wait. And I light that waiting, not with power, not with thunder, but with the soft resilience of reflected glory. I light it not to reveal, but to remind them that even in the absence of certainty, there is presence, that even when the voice is silent, the gaze remains, that even in exile, there can be home, if only in the glow that holds your name when no one else does. And so I shine, quietly, patiently, on bowed heads and upturned faces, on songs forgotten by the world but not by heaven, on nights that seem too long and questions too heavy. I shine because they still look up, because they still light their lamps, because their waiting deserves to be seen. The olive trees never sleep. Even when the wind is still and the stars do not blink, even when the valley hushes under the weight of waiting, their branches remember. I see them from above, their twisted limbs like raised arms frozen mid-prayer, their leaves trembling with secrets too old for human memory. They whisper, not in words, but in movement, in the slow shiver of silver green under my light, in the creak of bark remembering footsteps long vanished. I've learned to listen, not with ears, but with presence. And what I hear from them is older than this mountain, older, perhaps, than even I. They speak of prophets who once passed among them, voices that burned brighter than torches, men who bled truth into the soil. Isaiah, whose words still echo like thunder in a sky gone dry. Jeremiah, whose tears still stain the roots. Amos, Micah, Hosea, their syllables etched into bark and stone by repetition, not carving. The trees remember them all, not as stories, but as seasons. Each prophet a storm that came and went, leaving the air sharper, the silence deeper. When the people return to the mountain, the olive trees lean in. It's subtle, not a bending of the trunk, but a shift in attention, as if they know this is the moment to listen again, to receive once more the ache of a nation that cannot forget its promise. The prayers that rise tonight thread themselves through branches, snagging like threads on a thorn, and the trees hold them, cradling each syllable in the cradles of their limbs. I remember a night, perhaps 2 generations ago, though time is a fluid thing to me, when the grove was full of children. They had come with their parents, but the adults were busy with chants and candles. The children ran beneath the branches, their laughter like water on dry stone. But then, one boy stopped. He placed his hand on a trunk and closed his eyes. He didn't speak, he just stood there, listening. When he opened his eyes, he looked up at me and whispered, "They're still talking." I knew then that he had heard it too. What are they saying, these trees? Nothing that hasn't been said before. But repetition is not emptiness. It is how truth survives. They say, "He will come." They say, "Not yet." They say, "Be ready." They speak of oil pressed in silence, of roots that reach deeper than any drought, of branches grafted and broken and healed again. They whisper of the Anointed One, the Messiah, not as a theory, but as inevitability. Not if, but when. I sometimes wonder if the people know, if the priests lighting incense at the altar hear the same rustle, if the widows with cracked hands sense the resonance in the leaves. Or have they grown too weary, too focused on what hasn't come to notice what has always been speaking? Perhaps that is why I remain to notice what others no longer can. The trees have seen too much to be deceived. They've watched kingdoms rise and crumble. They've seen sacred fire extinguished and lit again. They've sheltered rebels and received prayers from trembling lips. They bear scars from blades, from fire, from frost, and still they remain, like the people, like the longing, like me. Tonight, the wind stirs gently, and the olive branches begin their liturgy. No one else seems to hear, but I do. They murmur about a woman who will say yes in a town not far from here, about a child who will sleep beneath branches like these, about a betrayal that will one day happen in a garden under their very shade. They do not speak these things with fear or regret, only certainty, as if all time is already present within their ring. And I wonder not for the first time if their faith is greater than ours, for they never doubt that the word will be fulfilled. They do not waver in winter or rejoice too quickly in spring. They simply continue, rooted, reaching, whispering. I shine down on them now, brushing their tops with silver. They shimmer slightly, not from dew, but from memory. I do not interrupt. I only witness. That is all I have ever done. That is all I was made to do. And somehow, in that simplicity, I find purpose. If you walk the path through the trees tonight, you will feel it. Not hear, but feel that ancient breath moving beside you, as if someone has just stepped past, as if a voice has only just finished speaking. And if you are still enough, if your hands are empty and your heart quiet, you might understand what the trees have always known, that waiting is not wasted. That silence is not absence. That promise, once spoken by the Creator, cannot go unfulfilled no matter how many nights pass under my light. They walk like shadows now, robes flowing with reverence but faces drawn with weariness. The priests ascend the path in solemn procession. From above, I see their movements before they reach the clearing, measured, deliberate, as though each step costs more than the last. Their garments shimmer under my light, ivory linen embroidered with memory. But what they carry is not just tradition, it is tension, it is expectation, it is the weight of centuries wrapped in silence. I have watched these holy ones for generations. Some come with fire in their bones, others with only routine. But tonight, something is different. The fabric of their silence has shifted. It is not torn, not yet, but stretched, as if one more unanswered prayer might cause it to give way. Their voices rise in chants, ancient and unwavering, but I see the quiver in their fingers, the slight hesitation as they pour oil or lift incense. These are not gestures of certainty. These are movements of men who continue not because they feel, but because they must. Their garments catch the moonlight, my light in folds that ripple like water. These robes, once symbols of divine connection, now cling to shoulders hunched from carrying too many unfulfilled promises. Yet still they wear them. Still they come. Still they perform the sacred rites, each act an echo of Moses, Aaron, the sons of Levi. I wonder if they feel the echo fading. I wonder if they, too, fear that the distance between heaven and earth has grown too wide for ritual to bridge. They speak few words outside the liturgy. Their silence is thick, shared. Some stare into the flames, others into the shadows cast by their own bodies. One man older than the rest sits on a stone just outside the circle. His eyes are closed, not in prayer, but in something deeper, reckoning. I've seen him before, younger, more certain. Now his breath is slower. He fingers a tassel at the corner of his garment, as if remembering what it once meant. When he finally opens his eyes, he does not look at the altar. He looks at the stars, and then at me. There's a question in his gaze, though it remains unspoken. A question older than this mountain, older than his office, older than the cloth he wears. Are you still there? It is not blasphemy. It is longing, and I understand it well. I have felt it in the stillness between their ceremonies, in the pause before the Amen, in the silence that falls after the final note fades. It is the ache of the faithful, not for answers, but for presence. Another priest kneels by the sacred fire, adding fragrant resin. The smoke curls up and around him, hiding his face for a moment. When it clears, I see tears. He does not wipe them away. He lets them fall into the folds of his robe. They leave no stain, but I remember. I remember every tear shed beneath me by prophets and kings, by mothers and children, by these men who carry the rituals of a nation on their backs. Their prayers tonight are more than performance. They are pleading. Not dramatic or loud, no, that is not their way. But there is urgency in the way they press their foreheads to the stone, in the way they whisper the names of the ancestors, in the way they pause before speaking the name of the Most High, as though uncertain whether it still holds power. I shine brighter for them, not because I can answer, I cannot, but because light, even borrowed, is a kind of comfort. If they look up, they will see me. If only for a moment, they will know they are not alone in their doubt. And perhaps that is enough. I have seen what robes can hide: fear, fatigue, faltering belief. But I have also seen what they protect, hope too fragile to be exposed. Each priest carries a flicker of that hope, whether they admit it or not. It burns beneath the layers of tradition, beneath the formulas and forms. It is the same flame that drew Moses to the bush, the same glow that filled the temple when Solomon prayed. It has not been extinguished, only hidden, only waiting. When they rise to complete the ritual, their movements are steadier, not because the doubt has vanished, but because the act of prayer has shaped them again. They are not new men, but they are reminded of who they are, of what they carry, of the God who once spoke through smoke and fire and silence. They finish the chants, they lower their heads, they bow, and for a moment, everything is still. I look down at their shadows, long, reaching, uncertain, cast across the stones that remember more than any scroll. And I think, perhaps this, too, is worship. Not just the words or the rites, but the perseverance. The choosing to return, robed in holy garments, even when the heavens seem distant, even when the silence stretches longer than the songs, even when all they have left is hope wrapped in cloth and memory. There is a kind of silence that descends only after all sound has exhausted itself. It is not the absence of noise, but the presence of something heavier, a stillness that feels inhabited, dense, alive. That is the silence resting on this mountain tonight. It stretches across the stones and trees, like a mantle woven from centuries of yearning. Even I, who hover in the stillest corners of night, can feel its weight. It is deeper than the quiet between songs, deeper than the pause before a priest begins to speak, deeper than the hush that falls over a child who senses something sacred but cannot name it. This silence does not just fall, it settles, pressing gently against every soul that dares to wait. I see them now, the ones still gathered, seated in circles or alone, their heads bowed, eyes closed, lips stilled. They are not asleep. They are listening. I once believed silence was emptiness. I have since learned better. It is a language, one not spoken with tongues or written with ink, but felt in the hollows of the soul. In this silence, I have heard the unspoken prayers of women who no longer believe their voices matter. I have heard the confessions of old men who remember mistakes too distant to repair. I have heard the hopes of children who have never seen a miracle but still dream of one. None of these are uttered aloud. All are carried on the current of this deep, wordless quiet. There are moments when even the wind stops and the leaves still. That is when it arrives fully, the silence that bears presence. It enters like breath held too long, like light beneath closed eyelid. And though no one speaks, everything within them rises. Some close their eyes tighter, others open them wide. A few weep without sound, and I above it all do not dare to move. What are they waiting for in such stillness? A voice? A sign? An answer long withheld? Perhaps. Or perhaps they seek not something new, but something remembered, a presence once felt in burning bushes and pillars of cloud, in thundering mountains and whispering winds. A presence that now comes, not in spectacle, but in silence. For silence is not the opposite of God. It is often the doorway. I see one man kneeling alone. His lamp is out, though the oil remains. He does not relight it. He simply sits in the dark, his hands open on his lap. He is not praying in any way others would recognize, but everything in him is turned upward. Everything in him waits, and I, watching, feel a stillness that is not mine pass through me, as though something beyond me is present. There are no angels tonight, no visions, no fire from heaven, but this silence is not empty. It is expectant. It hums with something just beyond reach. And perhaps that is the holiest part, the waiting not for spectacle, but for something small, true, hidden. Some will leave this place unchanged, telling themselves nothing happened, but I know better. I see the way their breath slows, the way their shoulders loosen, the way they linger a little longer before rising. Something has been planted in them, not loudly, but deeply. And what is planted in silence often bears the most lasting fruit. They will not speak of it. They may not even know it, but they will carry it into their homes, into their doubts, into the way they hold their children or speak to strangers. A subtle shift, a gentler word, a longer patience. This is the fruit of holy silence, not drama, but transformation. And me? I remain, hovering in the silence that is deeper than night. I have nothing new to offer, no light of my own, but I shine anyway, not to announce, but to accompany. I lend my borrowed glow to their waiting, to their stillness, to their ache. I do not need to be heard. I only need to remain. and so I do. For some truths do not need to be shouted. Some promises do not arrive with trumpets. Some revelations come only in the hush when all has been said, and nothing more can be added, and the soul, stripped of all noise, can finally hear what has always been present. I am here, if only I could speak, not with thunder or fire, not with proclamations that split the heavens or commands that bend nature to my will. Just one word, one whisper, one syllable to interrupt the unrelenting ache of their questions. I hover here, night after night, watching them pour their longing into prayers shaped by silence. And I want to answer. I want to tell them what I see. I want to say, you are not alone. You are not forgotten. But I cannot. I have no mouth, no voice, no breath. I am a body of dust and reflection, a borrowed gleam suspended in sky, forever listening, never responding. It is not punishment. It is simply what I am, a witness, a reflector, a presence without a sound. Still, the desire remains. Each night, as the priests lift their hands and the people close their eyes, something in me stirs. I feel it when the young ones weep quietly, hiding their tears in sleeves. When the old ones clutch their walking sticks like lifelines, whispering the names of those long gone. When the wind falls still and every heart turns upward with a yearning too deep for words. In those moments, I burn with the longing to speak. I want to tell the woman who returns each week with the same petition, though no miracle has come, that her faith has not gone unnoticed. I want to tell the man who doubts, even his doubt, who lights the lamp anyway, that I see his courage. I want to tell the child whose mother died in silence that her name is still spoken in the stars. I want to tell them all, I see you, I hold your silence, I carry your hope, but I remain mute. There are nights when my silence feels like betrayal, when their voices rise and fall and no reply comes, and I shine anyway, impassive, constant, as if untouched by their need. I watch their shadows stretch across the ground like questions left unanswered. I watch them go home, shoulders hunched, candles flickering low, and I think, if only I could say it. If only I could assure them that the waiting is not in vain. But would they believe me? Would they recognize truth if it came from one who reflects instead of radiates? Would they hear it if it wasn't wrapped in thunder or borne on angel wing? Or would they dismiss it, as they do so many small, quiet things? For even among themselves, they have forgotten how to listen to stillness, forgotten that the word first came as breath, not blade. And yet, there are moments rare, but real, when I think they do hear me, not with ears, but with something deeper. A mother holds her infant closer beneath my light, not because it is cold, but because she feels seen. A boy pauses mid-step, looks up, and smiles without reason. A prayer ends not with a word, but with a sigh, and in that sigh, there is peace. They do not know it, but they have heard me. Not my voice, but my witness. Not my word, but my presence. Perhaps that is enough. Perhaps it is not my place to speak, but to remain, to hover, to reflect, to offer light when the sun is gone and warmth is memory, to give shape to the night so that their shadows might fall somewhere and not vanish entirely. Perhaps what they need is not a new voice, but the certainty that someone still watches, that someone still listens. And so, I will not burn with bitterness. I will not curse my silence. I will let it deepen me. I will let it sharpen my seeing, soften my watching. I will be the moon that holds their longing gently, night after night, without reply. For not all presence needs to be loud. Not all comfort needs to be spoken. Some truths are carried better in silence. But still, if I could speak, oh, if I could speak, I would tell them this: the one you seek is closer than you think. He moves beneath your questions. He dwells within your waiting. He listens to every silence you send into the sky, and he answers not always in the way you expect, but always, always with love. And though I am only a mirror, I have seen enough to know this. His light is coming. It was so small at first I nearly missed it. A tremble on the horizon, not even light, not yet, more like a question forming just beneath the skin of the sky. I had hovered through countless nights without change, blanketing this mountain with the same soft silver, watching the same faces turned upward in hope and fatigue. But that night, something stirred beyond the eastern ridge, a breath held too long finally beginning to exhale. I do not know if they saw it. Most had already begun their descent. Lamps dimmed, footsteps soft on the stone path. The silence lingered, as it always did, but beneath it, beneath even the hush of holy garments, came something new, a shift. I turned toward it. Though I have no neck to move, no eyes to narrow, still, I turned. I adjusted the full of my face to reflect what might be coming, and in that tilt I felt something ancient respond. The stars above me quieted, as if leaning in. It was not dawn, not even the blush of it, just the faintest glimmer, like a promise breaking through its first barrier, shy, uncertain, but undeniable. I watched it grow, though slowly, so slowly that even time seemed unsure. The trees did not rustle, the stones did not hum, the world simply waited. But I knew as one knows a storm before the wind comes, or love before a name is spoken. It was coming, not a sign to convince, but a whisper to prepare, a voice not yet heard, but already felt in the marrow of things. For centuries I had watched them look eastward, singing of redemption, crying for deliverance, hoping against despair, their voices cracked with the strain of waiting, their rituals worn smooth by repetition. And now something had begun. I could not name it, but it was real. And realness, however small, changes everything. The glimmer did not blaze, it pulsed, not with urgency, but with assurance, like a heartbeat, like a secret the sky could no longer keep. I hovered, stunned. All the psalms, all the prophecies, all the questions carried on tears and chants and stilled breath they had built to this quiet beginning that shouted nothing, demanded nothing, but altered the horizon nonetheless. I wished I could hold it, this glimmer, wrap it in silver, and scatter it across the mountain like incense. But it was not mine to carry. It belonged to the east, to the morning, to the one who would come not with armies or thunder, but with skin and blood, and the cry of a newborn. I thought of the trees, how they had whispered of this night. I thought of the priests, how they bowed not knowing what drew them. I thought of the woman who touched the trunk and listened, of the man who knelt beside an unlit lamp, of the child who looked up and smiled. They had felt it too, felt the stirring beneath the silence, the answer forming like dew. And now, with the faintest shimmer, the silence itself began to change. Not end, change. Because silence does not need to be broken to be filled. And this glimmer, this thread of light barely stitched into the fabric of night, filled it, not with sound, but with presence. I did not move, I did not blink, I only witnessed. That is all I could do, that is all I was meant to do. But even in stillness, I trembled, for something holy had shifted. And though the mountain remained unchanged, and the stars stayed their courses, and the earth did not tremble, everything was different. Because now there was light where there had only been shadow, and where there is light, no matter how small, darkness loses its claim to permanence. They did not look up that night, not most of them, not the priests folding their garments with trembling fingers, not the mothers gathering children who had fallen asleep in the hush of waiting, not the old men leaning on staffs worn smooth by generations of return. They had seen nothing in the east, not yet. The glimmer was too small, too distant, too quiet to interrupt their patterns of departure. They left, as they always did, slowly, reverently, their footsteps softened by weariness, their voices silent not from despair but from something else entirely, unknowing. And yet I stayed. I hovered, unmoved but not untouched, my borrowed light still washing the stones, still kissing the olive branches, still following their backs as they descended. I wanted to call to them, not in sound, not in spectacle, but with some ripple of presence to press against their awareness with the gentle urgency of what had begun. But that was not my gift. I am not the messenger. I am the memory, the reflection, the one who sees and does not forget. And so I did what I was made to do. I bore witness. I turned fully to the east, even as they turned westward. I let the glimmer brush across my face, claiming me as one of its first companions. I let it shape me, not into something new, but into what I had always been, a vessel for light, not my own. The sky did not break open. The stars did not rearrange themselves, but the silence changed once more, stretched open by the weight of what now approached. And though no trumpet sounded, no prophet declared, I knew he was coming, not just someday, soon, perhaps not to this mountain, perhaps not to these worshippers, but to this world, to the earth that had groaned with longing, to the hearts that had bled through centuries of ache, to the people who, despite everything, still lit lamps in the dark. They would not know I had seen it. They would not remember that I had hovered over them in their songs and silences. I would be forgotten, as I always am when morning comes. My glow, mistaken for glory, would fade into background. My role, unspoken, would dissolve like mist. But I remained. I stayed. I bore witness. And that, perhaps, was the most holy thing I could offer. I have no temple, no altar, no incense or veil, but I have memory, I have light, I have constancy, and in this world, where hope often shivers beneath doubt, I shine anyway. Not because I am enough, but because He is, the one they have waited for, the one I glimpsed in that first glimmer. He is coming, and when He does, it will not be my name they remember, it will not be my light they celebrate, but still, I will have been there, still, I will have watched, still, I will have known. So even as they forget me, I will remain above gardens where secrets will be surrendered, above rivers where sinners will be washed clean, above hills where blood will be spilled for love, above tombs that will crack open not with thunder, but with light. I will remain when their songs change, when their robes are replaced with ashes, when their tears become testimony. I will remain not to be honored, but to remember. And when night falls again, and it will, I will rise once more, not as answer, but as echo, not as fire, but as reflection. I will rise and say nothing, but shine with the knowing that He has come, that He is coming, that He will come again. And for those who dare to look up, even after so many unanswered prayers, even after so many unreturned glances, I will be there. I will light their waiting. I will hold their hope. I will remain, bearing witness.